For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Alongside Dave Minuk, alongside the biggest Blue Jays fan that I know,
the biggest,
Ezra Ginsburg, the biggest. He's been tracking FlightAware all night long to see if any of the other Dragon's Den participants are flying into Toronto today under the guise of pretending to be Shotan Ohtani. It'll be
and Drew, even though I'm wearing the Blue Jays hat, Dave Minuk is definitely the Ohtani of Illegal Curve. He can do it all.
That's right. He can pitch, he can hit. He's a five-tool player, as we like to say here on Illegal Curve. But as he's sporting the Jays hat and the Seagram's gear, and Dave's wearing the Farmery gear, and I'm wearing the Illegal Curve gear. So nonetheless, we are all decked out. We are all swagged out on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Good to see you, gentlemen. Such a great time on Thursday night at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. It was so great to see so many of you that are frequently in the chat with us, and of course people who are new to us as well. It was just a tremendous party on Thursday night at Boston Pizza, so you have to start with thanking everyone for attending, and of course all of you who weren't able to make it but were able to tune in for the post-game show. We'll see you next time at the next Illegal Curve party at Boston Pizza. Details to come along those lines in the next couple of weeks or so. But Dave is saying, of course, that next Saturday we're going to be live at number 2 Donald Street at Farmery Brewing, a live on location broadcast, so you can pick up some delicious Illegal Curve lager, which Dave has in the background there, plus all the other great products that our friends at Farmery put out. We're going to be live there next Saturday, number 2 Donald Street. You can't miss it. Be there next Saturday. Come say hi to us. Ezzy's going to be shotgunning beers right at 8:30, so it's going to be a real exciting morning for
keg
all
stands.
involved.
I thought, Drew, keg stands.
They actually don't open till 9, though. Just to be clear, we'll be there a little bit earlier, but the retail store doesn't open till 9.
When the clock is ticking and you're banging on the door to come in and see us, don't bang too hard until it's at least 8:59 and 58 seconds. We don't want to do any damage to their to the front door there at Farmery, but we'll be there next Saturday. Looking forward to that, of course. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning. Lots of Jets talk to get to. A little tongue in cheek on the Jays talk there. I wonder if the Jays do end up signing Ohtani, it'll make up for the fact that the Leafs have the fewest number of regulation wins tied for the fewest in the entire NHL so far this year.
Isn't that crazy? That is a crazy stat. Also, the fact that Carolina is in a wild card spot, Dave and I, right before we went live here, we were talking about, it seems like nobody's talking about the Philadelphia Flyers. And I can't wait to have our friend Anthony Sanfilippo on, who writes for crossingbroad.com. He used to work for the Flyers, used to write for the Delaware County Daily Times. He's one of our best friends going back to the Kick days and obviously the TSN 1290 days. But the Flyers, I realize a lot of focus has been on the Canucks and obviously the Jets as well, who are only a couple points out of first in the Central. But I mean, that Metro division, it's really crazy when you consider which teams are currently in a playoff spot and which teams are on the outside looking in. Obviously, my Devils right now aren't in a playoff spot, but it's just, there's so much parity around the league. We say it every year, but this year especially, it seems like there's really, I mean, it's not like one team is really running away with it. I mean, earlier in the season, Vegas and Boston looked like they were running away with it, but those teams have cooled down a little bit. And obviously, the Bruins and the Rangers are at the top of the pile, but just so close, especially in the East, but also in the West. I mean, Nashville and Arizona, they just keep winning, right?
Yeah, look, and that's, you're right. Parity is the name of the game, and that's what the NHL wants, and oftentimes that's what the NHL gets. But I don't want to start with parity on this Saturday morning edition. I want to ask you guys this question. I'm going to put up on my second screen here if I can work the magic. Now, it's worth noting, of course, that it's the headlines are not written by the author himself. But let's see if I can even make it this little bit bigger. The headline on the Winnipeg Sun.
Zoom in, Drew.
Can you see? I hopefully
Maybe
you
do
can
it on
see
the actual
there.
headline and not the ad.
Yeah,
Unless
that
you
would
want to
be-
upgrade your home.
Well, I don't want to upgrade my home. I can't afford to do that. But there you go. I can. I think you can see what I'm
No,
talking
Drew, you
about.
could have gone to a little site called legalcurve.com. That would have just been one of the headlines in the thing. Then you could have seen
Yeah, I know.
my little quip beside it.
I know that, but nobody
And
wants.
in fact, actually, you should go to illegalcurve.com right now. Please
Yeah.
do on your second screen.
Oh, right, okay, hang on.
Believe me, there's some reasons there. Go to illegalcurve.com.
Okay.
Second screen. Morning papers.
Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming that's what everybody in the chat already did as.
And then obviously click on the Farmery beer ads and click on the Seagram's ads.
Is there a clip that I'm okay? I'm on the second screen. I'm on illegalcurve.com. What is there anything specific I'm supposed to?
Well,
be
go to
looking
the
at?
morning papers.
I'm at the morning papers.
Go to this headline under the Winnipeg Sun.
Okay.
Notice
so you
my
just want-
quip. My quip mentions Drew
Lo-
Mandel.
Drew, what is this, amateur hour?
This might have been yesterday's morning papers. Is maybe where I'm supposed to be at, Dave. Not today's.
I'm pretty sure it says Drew Mandel, but okay.
It absolutely
Mandel.
there is no word of anything that says Drew Mandel. I don't believe, unless I'm reading the wrong morning papers. Hang on, let me go back.
No,
No, that's yesterday's morning papers.
Yesterday morning,
Yeah,
morning
okay.
papers.
It's
Well,
the
you're bringing up
well-tuned.
Drew, sorry, you're bringing up yesterday's news, so I didn't realize it was yesterday's news.
Well, there you go. Yes, you did. You did use me there. I can see it now. My question for you guys, though,
Yes.
now keep in mind that the headline is not written by the author of the article, but you can see it here.
Felt like it was written by you.
Thank you, Dave. From the, do you agree with the commentary that has emerged since Thursday's victory over the Colorado Avalanche that the Jets deserve to be mentioned among the elite teams in the NHL at this point of the season? That's the question that I want to pose to you guys to start on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Yes, and we could also just go back to December 2022, by the way. We had this exact same conversation 365 days ago. But, I mean, let's not kid ourselves, guys. The biggest difference here is the forward depth and the improvements the Jets have made defensively, right? Like we talked about this at Boston Pizza. I mean, the Jets are a better defensive team, period. They allow less high-danger chances. They allow less shots.
Mhm.
They allow less goals. So the biggest difference is the improved even strength play,
Yeah.
the improved team defense. The special teams are kind of a separate issue that I think, I mean, if you were to look at each area and, give the forwards a grade, give the defense a grade, goaltending, special teams, I mean, special teams would probably get the worst grade, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that definitely has to improve, as the season progresses. But I think, Drew, it ultimately comes back to that word elite is maybe the most subjective word in all of sports, right? And maybe there are some other words, but like, what does elite mean? Does elite mean top 2, top 3,
Elite
top
means
5?
Elite means championship contender.
And then yes, the Jets are definitely elite because
Really?
I think like we just talked about it, right? Like look at who's in first, second place in the entire league. It's Vegas number 1 at 39 points. Then you've got the Rangers at 37 points. We should mention the Rangers have 3 games in hand. I think the Rangers and the Kings have played the least amount of games, but you've got the Golden Knights at 39 points, Rangers 37, Bruins 37, Kings 35, the Vancouver Canucks are 35. The Vancouver Canucks are 4 points out of first overall in the entire league. If that isn't parity, I don't know what is, right? So like, are the Canucks an elite team? Sure. I mean, if you're a Canucks fan, you definitely think they're an elite team, but I think, Drew, if the definition, as you said, is a championship contender, can the Jets be competitive for a Stanley Cup? Because they're clearly making the playoffs at this point. I mean, the Jets are not missing the playoffs this year, unless they lose like 10 games in a row or something, which is not going to happen. Right. I think everybody agrees the Jets are solidly in a playoff spot this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, look, they have an elite goaltender, top 3 goaltender in the league. They have one of the best offenses in the league. Look, Kyle Connor is well on his way to a 50 to 55 goal season. He might even get up to 60. Cole Perfetti is having a breakout year in his second full year. Like, this is a good team. I wouldn't necessarily say, Drew, that they're the best team in the league, but I think you could make an argument that, yeah, this is a top 5 team in the league, and they have just as good a chance as anybody. Let's not forget last year, guys, The Boston Bruins and their 126 points got knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, and that speaks to your comment about parity, that even if you are a mile ahead of a team you're playing against in the playoffs, it almost renders the regular season relatively meaningless, because any team can knock off any other team come playoff time. We've seen it too often to happen to really describe it as a earth-shattering occurrence. I mean,
well, and sorry, Drew, you just wanted to quickly say, we got the comment up from Hunter Bob. I think he's right. I think most people agree. What the Jets are going to be seeking, Dave, at the trade deadline, or prior to the trade deadline, I should say, is a top 4 defenseman, right? And most likely on the right side, because we know with Morrissey, Brendan Dillon, Dylan Samberg, they're stronger on the left side of their D versus the right side. I mean, all due respect to Dylan DeMello, Neil Pionk, Nate Schmidt. I mean, the Jets they've needed a top 4 right-handed defenseman for a while. So I think that's probably what they're looking for. They're looking for their Matthias Ekholm, right? So I do think that at the very least, I think you could say that the Jets are a top 10 team. And then I think there's a strong argument to be made that they're, top 5, top 7, whatever you want to say. Yes, they've lost to Vegas, they've lost to Dallas, but they just beat Colorado. And that wasn't a lucky victory. I mean, they earned that victory 100%.
Dave, same question to you. I mean, as he's made his arguments as to why the Jets are, in his mind, an elite team. From your perspective, do you echo what he's saying, or are you maybe a little bit more cautious to go ahead and use the words, or describe the Jets as a Stanley Cup contender?
Well, I mean, look, I think that when you have a goaltender of Connor Hellebuck's ability, that you're always going to be a contender, because I think he can win games, and he can win. We know he can win games, and we know he can win series for your team. So, I mean, look, with Connor Hellebuck, anything is possible. And as he's right, this is a much more balanced team. When you have an injury now, it's not as disastrous, because you do have guys who can fill into different roles on this club. But I don't think the Jets are an elite team. And I think that folks are right in the sense that it's early. It's early to be using words like elite, because it's been 2 months. The NHL season is a long one. And, if we're still having this conversation and they're still producing in January the way that they have in October and November, they do this in December, and then they do it into January, then it's a little bit of a different conversation. But I mean, if Joe Pascucci is saying the Jets are elite, I want to probably just back off what I'm saying. But I honestly think that the Jets are a very good hockey club. And I agree, Ezzy and I were talking about it before, they're probably in that 5 to 10 range. I mean, they beat Florida, who's second in their division. They beat Florida twice. So, they've beaten some good hockey teams, as he's right. It's not a question of that. But you've lost to Dallas twice. You've lost to Vegas twice. So you do have to, get past those teams. You split with the Oilers, obviously.
And so in that game, as we know, they should have had at least a point.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But look, I'm not saying the Oilers are elite, even though they're on fire right now, and it looks like they're Ezzy's little kiss of death of they're not making the playoffs.
Still not making the playoffs, Ginsburg.
Well, I mean, good thing
you're right. You win, Drew. You win that one. Hey, You win some and you lose some. I lose most. I lost that one. Yeah.
So
I mean, come on. It's
you never bet against.
How many times do we have to say Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, right?
Yeah, you don't bet against him. That's just especially that early in the season. And again, we were talking about it. You look. The difference between like Columbus, who looked like their season was over, and
their season's over.
Well, it is, but they're only 6 points back of the Islanders and Carolina right now in 29th. I think
I'm confident in saying their season's over. I don't have any problem with that.
That's fine. But statistically, it's not, because they're 6 points back. So I'm just saying,
something to play for.
The reality is that
they're 6 points back, also known as last place in the Metro Division. That's what's crazy about it. They're last. Like, you're saying that the Blue Jackets aren't completely out of it. They're last place in the Metro Division. That's what's crazy. Like, nobody had Philadelphia second place in the Metro Division on their bingo card.
Right. And look, San Jose's like this will be a tough test, because San Jose's been playing better. They beat the Rangers. They beat who else they beat? They beat Boston. They beat a couple of good teams.
They beat Boston.
Yeah. So San Jose's been playing. Now Boston has been on a bit of they were a bit I think pedestrian. They were, I think, 5-4-1 in their last 10. So Boston's come down to earth a little bit. But I think that I think what it ultimately comes down to, for me at least, is there aren't that many elite teams. There really aren't. Like right now, Vegas, and even Vegas's numbers were ballooning a little bit in the bad way. So, again, Dallas and Vegas and Boston, I mean, that to me, I don't really don't think anybody's distinguished themselves as elite, really, because again, all these teams have come back down to earth to a certain degree. Now, if Boston was going to perform the way they did last year, like I really don't think elite is. You describe the top 10 teams as elite. Like to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
No,
There's
elite, by
probably
definition
top-
of elite should probably be like 3 to 5 teams, right?
Yeah, and honestly, in my division, it's probably top 3 teams in the NHL are the elite teams, maybe 4, and then you get into very good team status. And to me, the Jets are in a very good team status with an overall depth that you like to see. They've got some studs in Scheifele and Connor, and Ehlers is heating up. That line's heating up. And again, the back end has played fairly well given their, I would say, limitations, and the goaltending has picked up. So right now, the Jets are, in my mind, a very good hockey team. Are they elite? Not yet.
I personally think the 2 best teams in the league right now are in the West. Like if you were just, and I'm no fence sitting here, if I had to pick the 2 best teams in the league, I would go Vegas and Dallas. And we've seen both of those teams beat the Jets this year, right? And it's not just because of that or because of where they're at in the standings now, because I think Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, is number 1 overall in the league, right?
They are, yes.
So, and it's not just because of that, but it's just because of their overall depth, right? And the biggest question mark last year was their goaltending, and Aiden Hill has turned into a bona fide top 10 goalie in the NHL. Like, I think if you're picking the top 3 goalies for Team Canada at the Four Nations tournament or whatever they're going to call it, not the World Cup of Hockey, they've been very clear.
Don't they know there is a Four Nations Cup already? Like that already exists.
But honestly, Drew, I strongly believe if you're talking about the best 3 pro goaltenders in Canada right now, you're probably talking about Carter Hart. I know you're going to hate that I'm going to say this, but Jordan Binnington, and I think you're talking about Aiden Hill.
Well, I mean, I think that says more about the state of Canadian goaltending than it does about the players that you've mentioned. Because in no way, shape, or form is Jordan Binnington, should be considered among the previous, who's who of Canadian goaltenders on the international scene. That would be my comment about that.
Okay, well, let's stick with the topic is whether the Jets are elite, and C-Mac's comment is a good one because to me, again, the Rangers, the Bruins, Vegas, and Dallas, and again, we haven't mentioned LA. LA's been pretty lights out, and LA has been winning a lot of hockey. So, those are probably, again, are they all elite? The Bruins have come back down to earth, as have Vegas, but because they did so well early, they built themselves up those.
Just one thing, I just to rub it into Drew a little bit more. As of today, goal save above expected, Jordan Binnington is number 6 in the league.
Do you trust him in a big game?
No.
There you go. There, thank you. You've proven my point for me. And
I'm just saying he just based on that stat alone, he's top 6.
And
in
I
the
saw
league.
that our buddy Jeremy Rutherford, I think, wrote an article in The Athletic about Binnington's play as of late, saying, way fewer histrionics on the ice, way less of the obnoxious behavior that made people wonder what the hell's wrong with this guy, and way more of getting back to how he was when he was a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. And if that's the case, then great. But consider me ironically from St. Louis, the show me state. I'm gonna wait and see. He's gonna have to show it to me a little bit more consistently and throughout the course of the entire season.
Fair enough. And just on this topic, I know this isn't goalie lunch, and Dave wants to get back to the Jets, but let's give a shout out to Cam Talbot and the year he's having. He's 2nd in the league in goal save above expected.
Well,
he's
that's
what is he at? 11. Hold on, let me look it up here. He's at 11.4 goal save above expected.
Wow.
Aiden Hill's number 1. So Talbot deserves a lot of credit. He's the wily veteran.
Well, that was the
not
question.
Many people thought he was going to be that good this year.
That was the question mark about the LA Kings starting the year. Could you trust their goaltending? Because they certainly went with a goaltending tandem of guys who are on the downsides of their career, or certainly based on the aging curve.
I was gonna say, are they?
Well, based on the aging curve, you would expect
Phoenix
they would
Copley, all due respect, he's a backup. I mean, he's not a guy that you're expecting to play 50 games a year.
Right. But I mean, you would have thought that what's the big question mark about the LA Kings to start the season? And the Jets, of course, are going to face the Kings to wrap up this road trip. I mean, the road trip that they're on, is bookended by the more difficult games, at least the more difficult games on paper. The next 2 games, you got Anaheim tomorrow night and then San Jose on Tuesday night. Those should be, those are 2
look out for Mike Hoffman and those San Jose Sharks.
Well, nobody's using the word elite to describe either of those 2 teams. Those teams you're using the words first overall draft pick to describe the Ducks and the San Jose Sharks.
By the way, it'd be great. It'd be great if the Sharks called up Leon Gavanke to play against the Jets in his first NHL game.
I believe
have the Ducks drafted Cole Iserman yet?
Yeah, I believe the Ducks are 1-9 in their last 10. So I mean, the Jets did a lot of the heavy lifting on
The
Thursday
Ducks
to get
are not elite.
no to get
You know
the,
who is elite though? Leo Carlson. I'm not sure if you guys saw his breakaway the other night. That guy is crazy.
Yeah.
He's good.
the Jets started the road trip by getting that victory. And the truth is, there's no reason at this point in time for the Jets to not end this road trip at least 3-1. And you never want to discount your opponent,
Yeah.
but the Jets have to have that mindset, and they've been good so far this year at beating the teams they should be beating. That's been, sort of, as we talk about this elite conversation, yeah, they've been losing some games against these elite teams, the upper echelon teams, whatever word you want to use, but they've been beating the teams they should be beating. Well, they beat a team in Colorado that, that was a good victory. You could see it. You read about it. You could feel the buzz. And now you got 2 games against teams that are below you in the standings. And as a result, you need to be able to look, you have to match the performance you had on Thursday night, and you should get positive results. And the Jets have to go in with that mindset on Thursday, Dave.
Well, 7 JP 7Bs is absolutely right when he says the IC Crew's elite.
Well, now we know that the word elite is just being thrown around way too easily.
I was going to say, well, considering we've just said how little value it has, maybe that's not such a compliment, but we appreciate it regardless because we believe it was intended as a compliment. But sorry, Drew, what was the question? I got so excited about IC being called elite.
Just comment, just talking about how the Jets have started the road trip off with a very big win and, an important victory, an important divisional game. And now you have to match that tomorrow night and then again Tuesday night against your 2 weakest opponents on this road trip.
You just look, I mean, regardless of any team can beat any team any given night. Right? We just talked about San Jose beating the New York Rangers, and we just talked about the New York Rangers being an elite team. So, I mean, you've got to kind of, and it's interesting because the Rangers really fallen off a cliff. I think it was their rush chances against or rush goals against them was like number 1 in the NHL. And now it's dropped in like for the first month and a half or month of the season. And it's dropped down to like 20th or something like that. But regardless, you just have to show that you're not going to change your game. And that's the biggest key for the Winnipeg Jets is show that you're going to play the same way against Anaheim and San Jose that you did against Colorado. And if you can do that,
and the good news is, Drew, the Jets, pardon me, Dave, the Jets could be blindfolded and they could still beat the Ducks and Sharks.
No,
that's with the arrogance.
That's well, I mean, look,
and I'm not talking about Rick Model Martel.
I was going to say, just call me Rick Martel, Drew.
Yeah.
No, and look, you're going to see we'll see what happens in terms of the goaltending. We expect Connor Hellebuck tomorrow night, and then I suspect we'll see Brossoit against San Jose, and you have Hellebuck against the Kings, or maybe not. Who knows? I mean,
you're going to see Brossoit for sure one of these 3 games, Dave.
Oh no, for sure you'll see Brossoit in one of the back-to-back. I would
think it'll be San Jose, maybe Anaheim though.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that you go Hellebuck because you're going to go Hellebuck and then you're going to go either Brossoit. You give Hellebuck the first start and then you give Brossoit the second, or because generally speaking,
what about going Brossoit against Anaheim tomorrow and then going Hellebuck back to back?
That thought crossed my head, Ezzy. Because the Jets are sort of in, usually you want your backup gets the second half of the back-to-back, but it certainly did cross my mind a little bit that if the Jets were to have an easy workload on Tuesday night, that you'd maybe consider that. It might be too early in the year to do that, and the travel isn't quite as easy as it is if it was Anaheim, LA back-to-back as opposed to Anaheim, San Jose, LA.
Drew, could you bring up a map of California right now?
San Jose is further north than Anaheim and Los Angeles.
Wow.
It's not that much further north. It's not that difficult.
This is elite level analysis.
Mr. California.
Well,
you're a California raisin, Drew.
Well, actually, Snoop Dogg sang the song about me. It's not about he was singing it about me when he was talking about California. And say I won't.
You sound like Fred Savage's brother in The Wizard.
In The Wizard, Ben Savage is the name you're looking for there, Dave M.
Topanga.
Is that actually literally his brother?
Well, Fred Savage's okay. Sorry, let me rephrase. Fred Savage's brother is Ben Savage, but I don't know
this.
That
Wonder
Ben
Years
Savage...
Lunch.
People don't know this, but Boy Meets World was actually loosely based on Drew's life.
It's true. I'm the inspiration. You should see the royalty checks just rolling in like nobody's business. It's fantastic. What do you think's keeping me afloat financially? It sure as hell isn't this show.
We're not gonna reveal who the real life Topanga was, though.
I don't even know what that means.
No, because I said it was based on your life.
Oh,
so
I
there-
get you
yeah,
what you're saying.
Topanga.
Okay. Fine.
I mean,
yes,
let's
it
be
is
honest.
true.
We all have Googled Topanga in our youth. Okay.
I see that people are already saying the show is off the rails, and it is a little bit off the rails. So I'll tell you what, we should go to break to bring it back on the rails, and then Rennie himself, Sean Reynolds, is going to join us for more Jets talk at the bottom of the hour. Much more about your local Winnipeg Jets franchise throughout the next 90 or so minutes. Join us, call your friends, tell them to join us as well. We're having a lot of fun on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Bottom of the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this snowy Saturday. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. And it's always Christmas when our good friend Sean Reynolds joins the program. I believe I just heard Dave say under his breath, "Oi," at the sound of my singing there. I think that's just exactly what I just heard.
I think I was just trying to speak for the crowd.
Boys, I don't know if the Jets are elite, even though I would say the Jets are elite, but Sean, that Whalers hat, there's no doubt in my mind that Whalers hat is elite. Love it.
Yeah, it's I picked it up. I was a work trip at New York and I picked it up at the NHL shop downtown. It's like one of those things that should I buy it? Should I not buy it? American money, all that kind of stuff. And once I got it home and put it on, there's never been any regrets.
And it's funny, Sean, because when we were at the draft in 2013, which was in New Jersey, but we were staying in New York, Ezzy and I were down at the NHL shop, and I bought the exact same thing. I bought a Whalers shirt, which I still have, and I don't regret it because it was a great purchase. It's great logo.
It's funny you should mention that. I was down watching I was in Boston and I was watching a ball game down there at Fenway and was looking for like gear, because I like to get stuff when I go to a game. Anyways, they had this awesome Whalers shirt, and my wife is always like, "Buy it," right? She's never like, "No, you can't be doing that." Every time she's like, "Yes, if you want to buy it." And I was like, "I just don't think I'll pick it up online when I get home." I never was able to find it online, and it's one of those things that I actually like regret every time I think about it. So yeah, buy the Whalers gear when you see it, people.
Not only that, we went broadcast from that flagship NHL store. We did the show from that store back in the day, if you guys recall correctly. So if
shortly after we were banned from the NHL.
Yeah, there you go. That's usually how it works. Is that they make that big mistake.
They didn't give us the fancy. They didn't give us the fancy NHL studio though, which is I think on the second floor. We broadcast from the retail location.
They gave us the dumpster in the back of the alley.
We were in the front. They knew that we were going to be in a big attraction to the retail location, so they wanted to draw in all the folks to come there.
Yeah,
very reasonable of them. Sean, nice to see you on the Saturday morning, good friend. Obviously brought you on to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, as you might expect, not the Hartford Whalers and the Hartford Whalers merchandise.
Well, I thought we were going to start talking about Zarli Zalapski there for a second.
a good Scrabble word, but not going to be effective on the program today. Sean, we were discussing the Jets and that victory in Colorado. Let me ask you this. I'm not going to ask you the exact same question, but does that victory in Colorado, defeating the Avs on the road, maybe change your perception of what this team is and or could be if they continue on this path?
I don't think it changes it, but maybe in one way, and it's a conversation I was having with someone last night. If I walk away from that game, and there's a little bit of a white knuckle aspect to that, right? The Jets holding on to make sure that they win that game, same as Carolina the game before. But I think it shows me in those two games that the Jets have added to their toolkit. The ability to get into games like that and take really high-end teams and shut them down. But what it does change for me is if I take a look at that, and I know that they didn't have everybody in that game. I know Nichushkin was missing, which he's the kind of guy that really definitely affects that team and its depth. But I looked at that team and that game and the way that they played, and the Jets to me were the deeper of those two teams, right? Like I don't think there was any doubting that the way that the fourth line played, and outside of Nathan McKinnon, who almost skilled them back into that game. I thought that if you're taking, punch for punch, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, I didn't think for a second that the Colorado Avalanche could be argued as being the deeper team coming out of that game. So that would change my perception, maybe, because I would think if the Jets are going to go deep in the playoffs, at some point you'd think they're probably going to have to face in either the first or second round the Colorado Avalanche, and in the other round the Dallas Stars, if they're going to get to the third round. So maybe it changes my perception of them in the way that it kind of changed my perception of how they stack up against that team specifically. But I think we knew enough about the Jets going into that game, how tough of a team they are, how tough of an out we expect them to be, which is an important thing down the stretch. I just keep thinking to myself, like, this is what we know of the Winnipeg Jets, but it's what we know of them at this time of year. And I think, in our last podcast, I think people like to call me the fun police sometimes. When this happens, I get into the situation where I say, okay, well, let's pump the brakes in the way that they're not handing out any awards for being third place in the Central Division on December 7th because you look good right now. It's what it is. The Winnipeg Jets right now look like a really great, capable hockey team. What we do know is around the rest of the league, there's other really great, capable hockey teams, and how they handle the year, how they build on their year, and how they grow heading towards the playoffs is going to determine how good they are. We do have this debate often, and every time the Jets do well, I remember it happened every time they had really good games last year against good teams. Everyone was like, did the Jets belong among the elite teams? It's like, to me, it's almost a moot point. If they do at this point of the year, that's great. That's fine. As a hockey fan, it's fun to have a good team that can do those kind of things. But, they should be taking a look at this and being like, we're a good team right now. We need to be a good team in April and on.
And Sean, I think, we mentioned this, we were talking about this right before you came on, right? Like the Vancouver Canucks, I know that, games in hand factor in here, but the Vancouver Canucks are only 4 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. They've actually played the same amount of games, but you've got the LA Kings, who I think have 3 games in hand on Vegas, or 4 games in hand on Vegas, actually. So that just shows you how much parity there is. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
It is a moot point, right? Like at the very least, you can say the Jets are firmly in a playoff spot and a top 10 team in the league, right? And then if you want to say that they're a top 5 team, I have time for that. I could listen to that argument. And, beating a team like the Colorado Avalanche only helps. And I agree with you. I mean, this Avalanche team doesn't have the same depth that they did a couple of years ago when they won the Stanley Cup, right? Like, and to start off with 2C, right? Like, to me, Ryan Johansson, yeah, he's got 9 goals. He's a good player, but Nazem Kadri was such a perfect second line center on that team, right? And I wanted to ask you about the Jets second line, because I think you guys would agree, everybody, watching, listening on the podcast would agree. Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers have been really good together. That line is sticking together for, at the very least, the short term. But to me, there's still, I think, a lot of room to grow for that second line. And yes, Gabe Vilardi, he's only been back for 4 or 5 games now. So obviously, our expectations have to be a little bit lower for him. But I still think that, you might see Nino Niederreiter moved up to that second line. I just want to get your take on what you're seeing from that second line, because Cole Perfetti, he's having a great year, breakout year. He's been fantastic. No complaints. It's just the makeup of that second line just seems to be a little bit off for me.
So I think what we've seen from the second line is that Cole Perfetti has been brilliant this year, and it's a coming out party, right? And that the success that they've had for the most part has been built around that and him emerging really on that stage. And I say this all the time, like a lot of my colleagues in Toronto, every time I talk with them, every time I do a radio show out of Toronto or wherever, Cole Perfetti is the guy most people want to talk about, right? Because I think what people around the league are seeing is like, holy smokes, yeah, we knew they had Scheifele, we knew that they had Kyle Connor and players like that, but we didn't know that he was at this level right now. Would that be enough in the playoffs down the stretch to just build a line and have its identity be around Cole Perfetti really coming out? And that's probably would be a dangerous game. I do think right now at this stage that line is missing Vladdy Namestnikov. I mean, talk about a guy here that just like very underrated. We always talk about, hey, is Kyle Connor underrated? Vladdy Namestnikov is underrated, right? Like he's taken that line and he's made it really go. But I do think that at some stage, the feeling with that line, or even with Vladdy Nemesnikov, is that like if they're going to go deep in the playoffs, they're probably going to have to address that line. I think they probably address that line at the trade deadline. That's my guess, is the direction that the Winnipeg Jets are going to go in. But in the meantime, you still got this good problem to have thing, because when Vladdy Nemesnikov comes back, who ends up getting bumped down to the fourth line? Is it going to be, I don't believe for a second it'll be Gabe Vilardi. Does it get to be Alex Iafallo? Do they break up the third line to push someone down there? So back to the point of the Jets having depth that I don't believe a really good team like Colorado has. They've got that good problem in the way that right now it seems like they've got a top 9 and they've got 10 people in that top 9 and one person to bump down. If they end up addressing that second line center issue, which I think really is, what you boil it down to, the Jets are probably going to try and fix at some point, then you basically have, a top 11, if not a top 12, the way that sometimes Morgan Barron can play, or even the AJF was really, really good in that important game. And we know that David Gustafson has played really well. You're starting to look at a fourth line that looks like it should be in the top 9, right? And then that's when you start getting depth to a point that you're dangerous in the playoffs. Because again, in that game against the Colorado Avalanche, if we're talking about depth, specifically that fourth line played such a huge important role in
I
that
said they
game.
were the best line in the game, Sean. When we were doing the post-game show at Boston Pizza, that's what I said. Gus Bus had 2 really good scoring chances. Obviously, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby picked up the big assist, right, on Adam Lowry's goal. I thought you could make an argument the fourth line was at the very least the second best forward line against Colorado.
Yeah, well, I would say they were the Jets' best line. Maybe you got to, give credit to Nathan McKinnon and how he played, and whatever line he was on was maybe arguably the best line in that game. Because again, I think the Jets were clearly the best team in that game, and it's only a close game in my mind because Nathan McKinnon almost skills that team back into the game. But yeah, like that if you've got like they were important in that game. They played a lot of time. They played a lot of important minutes, and because of that, it allowed them to lean on a line like Nathan McKinnon's that was getting played over and over and over again to try and get in that game. What I saw was the Winnipeg Jets and 4 really deep lines that the Jets coaches were not afraid to roll up against a Colorado team that was basically saying, okay, it's Nathan McKinnon's line. And then when they hop off, you guys got to get out there for a couple of seconds. Then Nathan McKinnon's line gets back out there. To me, that's not a winning formula. And again, why I thought the Jets fans should walk away from that and be like, I think that bodes well going towards the playoffs to have a team that we can roll like that, especially if they're going out and trying to address a second line center. They'll just be that much better and that much deeper if they pulled that off.
Sean Reynolds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know him as Rennie from Sportsnet, and of course Kenny and Rennie, the great show that follows
I
us.
just know him as the most handsome man on Sportsnet. That's how I
separate issue entirely. That's completely subjective, though, Ezzy. So I'm not gonna. I can't agree or disagree, but certainly we know him as Rennie at the very least.
Sean, want to ask you about Nikolai Ehlers, because to me, we glaze over the fact that he missed so much of the early part of this season with the injury and dealing with his recovery. And then you realize, and that's why, similar to Gabe Vilardi, who said, I have high expectations for myself. I'm also realistic knowing I've missed so much time. So with Ehlers, we're just starting to see, in my mind, in the last little bit, his talent level really emerge. And to me, the biggest question mark once he was put with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor was, how would they blend together? Because we know those two guys know each other well. But the one kind of knock on Ehlers is he's unpredictable. They know the other two felt like they always knew where they were going to be and how to find each other. But now it looks like Nikolai Ehlers kind of has found that out. And if that's the case, that makes that, we've used the word elite, that line could be elite offensively based on their circumstances. So what are you seeing, even though it's not a big sample size, from those 3 being put together right now?
I think you framed that question just perfectly in the idea that Nick Ehlers is this great offensive tool, right? That for years, I think a lot of people have looked and thought that the Jets didn't utilize enough because he's so fast and he's got that unbelievable shot. And when he gets moving and passing the puck, it can look really good as well. But the Jets, for the most part, I'm trying to think of a time where I thought that they did. I know that I liked for a number of years, the way they used him on the secondary power play and essentially just built that power play around him. I thought it gave the Jets a really dangerous secondary power play for a while. But this is a player that a lot of fans have thought the Jets didn't utilize to its maximum potential. And I would agree with that assessment. And he's not an easy player to do that with. And I think this is kind of the first time ever that I'm looking and I'm seeing, okay, and I don't think it's the best hockey he's ever played, but I think it's the best he's ever been in a situation where the team around him or the players around him understand how to play with him. And what I'm seeing right now is you had the duo of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. And Kyle Connor is not just a scoring machine, but he is a scoring machine, right? And if you've got a guy like Mark Scheifele, who I think has reached setup man levels of, he always held Blake Wheeler in such high regard, which he should, because I personally think for the late 2010s, Blake Wheeler was the best setup man in the NHL. I think Scheifele's reached that level of proficiency. And so now when you've got a player like Kyle Connor, who's all very good and can move the puck himself, but get lost in the weeds, and have a guy like Mark Scheifele be able to find him when no one else on the ice knows where he is, suddenly the puck's in the back of the net. That's a great tool to have. What I see basically in that Carolina game is Nick Ehlers understanding how to play off Mark Scheifele in that exact same way as well, which is maybe something that we hadn't seen him get to that level, where him, instead of just using his blazing speed and skating around and doing stuff, now he's getting the hockey IQ part of it, where he's understanding how to play off him. But then, guys, last game, we see him find Kyle Connor in front of the net for that really great move. And so what I'm thinking is, Kyle Connor is super fast and he can score, and we see him do that, right? Well, so is Nick Ehlers, and now we're seeing him do that. But Kyle Connor also has that thing where he knows when to not use the burners and kind of get lost in the weeds and find the soft ice, and he gets found by Mark Scheifele. Well, now all of a sudden, Nick Ehlers is figuring out how to do that as well. But all of a sudden, you've got Kyle Connor, who can play away from Mark Scheifele. He's led the team in scoring the last number of years, so clearly he's got something and doesn't rely on another player. Well, we're seeing that from Nick Ehlers as well, and him finding Kyle Connor the other day in front of the net for that really, really pretty goal. They just needed a little bit of space. It's done. So I think what you're seeing is everything that Kyle Connor has shown that's made him good, and all the tools he had to get him there. We knew Nick Ehlers had the tools. Now he's using those tools very similar, in my mind, in a way that Kyle Connor is using it on this line. And you're getting this perfect blend from all those players, where if you want to focus in on Kyle Connor, well, Nick Ehlers can burn you in the way that Kyle Connor does. And if you need speed, both those guys have it. I just look at Mark Scheifele as having two very similar tools on either wing right now, which makes that team really, really dangerous, because even if you try and shut down Mark Scheifele, they can get it done without him as well. So that, you guys are right. I think if you're taking a look around the league and arguing, and the how good is this team? Are they an elite team argument? I always say it's a great argument, but it means nothing until the playoffs. Well, who's the best line in hockey? I love that argument, and I love kind of stacking people up. And I'm not saying that these guys are the best line in the game. There's too many other lines where Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point, they've got so many points together combined, it's hard to deny them. But boy, oh boy, to send a line out like that and have those three skilled players all with their capability, and how the team, their coaching staff has them playing well defensively now. Mark Scheifele, is coming into it, look like a phenomenal, not just offensive, but two-way center. This is the kind of line that does well in the playoffs, because they can defend. They don't cost you when they're out there, and they're dangerous at every single moment. That's the kind of line you want leading your team offensively and defensively going into the playoffs.
Sean, I don't know if that was Kenny levels, but that was a little bit of a mini trip to the buffet.
That was a buffet. Yeah, I'm hungry this morning, gentlemen.
I always have this sign handy just in case, in case I need to stop anybody. That's usually for Ken, but we'll use it for you on this instance there as well. Sean, it's been 4 games now since Gabe Vilardi came back to the Jets lineup. And the talk, of course, was he needs time to get back up to speed, back to where he was playing in that really brief snippet of time before he went down with injury. And, you know, a lot of the games he hasn't necessarily really been what I would describe as noticeable. And what does it do to the Winnipeg Jets if Gabe Vilardi, and based on his comments when he came back from the injury, it sounds like it was really close to being a season-ending injury, not a 4 to 6 week injury. So, you know, what if Gabe Vilardi sort of can't get back up to speed to where he was at the beginning of the year? What if this injury is one that lingers and impacts him all season long? What does that do to the Winnipeg Jets from your perspective?
Well, it's a good question, and I think I always want to be like, I don't just want to like blow smoke. I don't know, and I think the reason we don't know is because what we saw from him right at the beginning of the year in those first couple of games, you're talking about getting back to that. Like, was that even Gabe Vilardi? Was that Gabe Vilardi playing above what his capability is? Like because he comes in here, and Gabe Vilardi is a guy that everyone talked about. They liked that trade for the idea of getting Vilardi because they think Vilardi has room to grow. I don't know what Gabe Vilardi is, and we don't know what he is right now because of the injury thing. And those injury things, it's a real thing. Like, he comes back in the season, it's hard to compete for the same reason that if we're going back to that Colorado game, one of the things that I pointed out in Nichushkin not being there. Well, Cale Makar had just come back, and clearly Cale Makar was not yet Cale Makar back in that game. Right. So that's one thing that we have to talk about in that game. If we're talking about where the Jets rank against the Colorado Avalanche, Cale Makar has like another degree to get to that isn't even close to what he showed in that game. So that can add to a depth angle and change the way that you perceive that Colorado Avalanche team, which is again another reason why I'm like, hey, you beat Colorado in December. It doesn't mean you won the Stanley Cup. Let's see how things shake out. They play them another. We've got them on the, I think, the 16th. They play them again on the 16th here in Winnipeg. Let's see how they stack up then. But to get back to Vilardi, he's just a guy that, like, potentially, we're talking about that second line. Maybe if he starts becoming what, I think the Jets believe that he can become, gets off the injury, adds to his game. I know he doesn't feel great about where his leg is right now. He told me, sometimes you just go to make that push and it's not there. And he said, it's structurally sound. You don't have to worry about that. But as an athlete, you're so hypersensitive to your body. You understand where things are. And that can be a double-edged sword, because he said, I understand right now very much so that when I go to make a push or I do this or I make a turn or whatever, it's not there, and that messes with your confidence. So that's what he's dealing with right now. But to the point you're talking about of what he could be for this Jets team, we don't know. Like he's a not at his ceiling player. Let's see where that ceiling is. Fine for the Winnipeg Jets in that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. And we don't know where that ceiling ends up, or guys, if he can get there. And I'm not trying to poo-poo things here, right, but he's a guy who's dealt with injury for certain parts of his career. And what we look at from Gabe Vilardi this last year is a guy that we think is like coming into his own. He's also a guy, I think he's 23 or 24 years old. So he's not the youngest guy out there. There may be a feeling that Gabe Vilardi never quite turns into what the Winnipeg Jets think he's going to turn into. So his potential, should he reach it, it could be massive for this team, but it's not a given that Gabe Vilardi is going to come back off this injury, get back up to speed, and absolutely blow up. He needs to find his game still, and the extent of his game at the NHL level. And sometimes it's difficult to do that with a new team. So lots to see yet out of Gabe Vilardi.
He was an 11th overall pick. I agree with you 100%, Sean. I think that you have to give him a little bit more of a leash, for lack of a better term, similar to with Ehlers missing all of the preseason games, right? So you're 100% right. I still think, we're at least 3 or 4, 5, 6 games away as Gabe Vilardi starting to get back into, mid-season form, right? And Sean, I got to ask you about the defense, right? Because there's been a lot of focus on the defense. Nate Schmidt's been a healthy scratch, I think, for 3 games in a row. Logan Stanley, obviously, gets burned by Nathan MacKinnon. Rick Bowness, I like that he had his back, and he said that basically, many defensemen have been burned by Nathan MacKinnon like that. I mean, Brendan Dillon was also burned by Nathan MacKinnon, right? On the second Avalanche goal, right? So I guess, do you see Declan Chisholm coming in tomorrow night versus Anaheim? Does Rick Bowness stick with Logan Stanley? And, what happens with Nate Schmidt? Is Nate Schmidt, your quote unquote 8th defenseman right now?
So again, like I don't know for tomorrow. I would think it would be Declan Chisholm, but it may be Logan Stanley for exactly what you're talking about, depending on how they're trying to use Logan Stanley. Logan Stanley made it clear that he wanted more opportunities on the ice than he's getting this year with the Winnipeg Jets. So my guess behind the scenes would be that there's an understanding he's not happy with the role he's playing, wants to play more. So maybe the Jets are trying to play him to showcase him. If they are, he had a pretty good game the other night, but got walked very obviously. You know, that's the hockey version of getting posterized, right? Like Michael Jordan just dunked on you is essentially what happened in that situation. And sometimes that can be the resonating image. So Rick Bowness is right. That's happened to a lot of guys. But if the Jets are playing Logan Stanley to get other teams and other scouts to allow to have a book on him, that doesn't look well, right? It doesn't look good. As good a game as he had, you know,
that's what I said around. Sorry to interrupt you. That's what I said to David Boston Pizza. I said, what's the opposite of showcasing someone? Right.
Exactly. Exposing someone. Right. So, and I'm not saying that happened, but like, if you're a team or looking around right now and you're thinking, well, we want Logan Stanley. Why do you want him? You're not necessarily I'm not saying he doesn't have offensive upside, but no one's going and saying we need, you know, a scoring defenseman right now. Let's go get Logan Stanley. You're getting him because he's got a big reach. You think he can shut down passing lanes. You know, you can think he can punish other teams. You think he can be great defensively. And so if you're looking at him and saying, okay, that's what we're going to go get with this guy, and he gets walked in a game and the other team scores a goal in that situation, you're not exactly saying we need to go out and get him right now, boys. That's not what's happening in that situation. So I think it all depends what's happening behind the scenes and how they want to use that. You talked about Nate Schmidt. I think that if I'm Nate Schmidt, it feels at this stage like it's got to feel a little ominous, because I'm having a hard time getting in the lineup right now. They're liking, at the very least, what's happening is they're liking enough of what they see from Logan Stanley or enough of what they see from Declan Chisholm that they want to see more from those guys, which means you're going to see less from me. I've clearly been identified as the guy in the top six defense that is the one that we would rather see out of the lineup than anyone else when they want to showcase these players. And Ville Heinola is still coming back, which means it's probably only going to get worse for Nate Schmidt down the stretch here. You know, he's a great pro. If you're going, we talked about the depth. If you're going into the playoffs and he plays, he's the kind of guy you feel you could put comfortable in because he's got that experience. But if you put him out, he's a great black ace to have. But I mean, I think what you're seeing more and more, and it's going to only accelerate when Ville Heinola gets back. The Jets are ready to take a look and see what they have in these other defensemen, to the point that it's not a cost. It's not like we're going to put these guys in to see what happens, and it could burn us. I think they're at the stage now where they feel comfortable enough with their options that they feel they can put those options in without getting burnt. And that really means that the Jets are turning the page or reaching a different stage with their defense, and that does not bode well for Nate Schmidt.
You know, Sean, we knew that the Nino Niederreiter signing was coming because it's been talked about for over a month when Scott Billeck reported that he wanted an extension, but we finally saw that.
Great reporting by Scotty.
It was. And so, you know, we knew that it was coming. We just didn't know when it was going to be here. And of course that got done on Monday. And to me, impressively, when you hear that it's going to be a heavily optional on Tuesday, and you see Nino Niederreiter as one of those guys out there on the ice, just speaks to the kind of character that you're getting both on and off the ice. What were your initial thoughts? Obviously, you've talked about it on Kenny and Rennie, but just now that you've had some time to reflect on it, getting him signed and getting that kind of character person in the room and in the community, what are your takeaways from the signing?
Oh God, tons of thoughts. And one of them is that, like, guys, this year was supposed to be the last year of the Jets championship window, right? And it's weird to think about it because they've to a degree moved on from that, but like they'd had Wheeler, Brian Little, Scheifele, Hellebuck, they had this massive bulk of people signed to this window. Then they basically started doing this back around after the 2018 thing, because they saw that this Jets team, they thought what we saw in 2018 was just going to only get better and continue on. Clearly that didn't happen, but you'll typically see when GMs lock into a window, if that window doesn't work out, it ends really, really badly. And the one thing I thought about that is, man, oh man, what a good job Kevin Cheveldayoff has done on the fly keeping what he believes is good about that window in the Connor Hellebucks and the Mark Scheifele's and so on and so forth, but positioning on the fly and like kind of creating a new window. Because what he's done now is he really likes what he saw from Vladimir Namestnikov, so he brought him back, and he got these players for Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's gone and out the door, and he was another guy that had fit with that window and what they thought was going to happen with that. So they positioned that and got some guys out of that they've extended longer. So Kevin Cheveldayoff has essentially on the fly created this new mini window that at the beginning of the year, that's a risk because you don't know how it's going to turn out. We know what the years past have looked like, even with Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck in place. For him to lock down on those guys, and now the Jets be having the success they're having, it looks brilliant, right? And Nino Niederreiter is just part of that because he's the guy that Kevin Cheveldayoff went out last year at the trade deadline, and people are usually shopping for the end of the deadline there. Kevin Cheveldayoff did a good job last year of shopping and identifying guys that he thought could have a future in Winnipeg. He wasn't just buying rentals, guys. He was locking down. He was buying a house to live in. He wasn't looking for a place that, he was going to be in until the next stage here, right? And went out and extended Namestnikov, extended Nino Niederreiter. These are the kind of guys who on the ice,
don't forget about AJF, Sean.
AJF, but the kind of guys that show the kind of character that the Winnipeg Jets really wanted. And you've heard it before. When you ask Rick Bowness what was wrong with this team and what needed to be changed, the first thing he says is character. Like the character of this team, the culture of this team needed to be changed. And one of the ways that you change the culture of a team is you try and bring in people with high character. And they've been doing that for a long time. The Jets, they did it with Nate Schmidt. They did it with Brendan Dillon. This was a continuation of that. But they went and they targeted Vladimir Namestnikov and Niederreiter, guys they thought had really, really great character. We've seen that play out. They're great in the room. They just add to the culture for this team. So these guys aren't just good players the way they're playing. Niederreiter, we know, can play up and down the lineup. As you were talking about the idea of opening up the debate of moving him off the third line because he can move up to the second or first line. So you've got those two players I just think are really emblematic of that. Namestnikov starts on the fourth line, moves up to the second line center, and that's when that line starts having its best time. This is a guy who brings you depth and you can use up and down the lineup. Niederreiter is the same thing. He can allow you to have one of the best third lines in the game because he can grind and add skill to it and play the game the right way. But you could also add him to the first line, and that would probably work as well. So out of that, great signing, but I just think like not enough has been said about Kevin Cheveldayoff's trade deadline last year, where he brought that kind of culture into the Jets dressing room and convinced those guys to stay and carry on. The last thought I had about it is just like, I don't know how Nino Niederreiter has bounced around the league the way he has, how a team didn't look at him before this and be like, we need to lock this guy down longer term. Mm-hmm. Rod Brindamore, who had him in Carolina, had a great line when he said, sometimes people look at guys who bounce around and say, why is that guy not sticking? Why is he bouncing around so much? And sometimes the answer is there's just a lot of other teams that want this guy.
That's a good line. Sean, we'll let you go on this one. Huss and Remus had their party on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday night, and we had our party at Boston.
It was Wednesday night. It was the night before. Okay, Little Brown Jug was on Wednesday. Yeah.
There you go. We had our party on Thursday night. Even though we're Farmery and Seagram's and Boston Pizza and all of our sponsors for life, give a plug to you and Kenny having your holiday party tomorrow night.
Yeah, if you guys enjoyed what happened with the IC boys, and why would you not? Great lads, great to spend some time with. And same thing with Hustler. I've been out to Hustler's events as well. I think shout out to your sponsors, shout out to Hustler's sponsors, shout out to our sponsors. Yeah. I think in this podcast space have been really lucky to get the support that we've got from our local community and a business community. They've really, really helped us out. And so that's why you guys end up at Boston Pizza, because they've got your backs. That's why Huss ends up at Little Brown Jug. They've got your backs, and we feel the exact, or Huss is back, and we feel the exact same way. TCB, Trans-Canada Brewing Company, has been our essentially Kenny and Rennie bricks and mortar shop. And God, we feel lucky to be there because like all that they have going on with the great products that they have there, and the great food and stuff like that. It's a place we love being, and we feel like really elevates us to be associated with such a well-run organization. So we'll be there for our party tomorrow, live viewing of Kenny and Rennie in the big room downstairs. Going to be like a great time. So anyone out there who's looking for, if you want to get out and get with like the hockey community, because guys, we share a lot of our hockey community as well, a lot of the same names. Yep. They're great folks. They're a lot of fun to be with. So if you were ever had any trepidation about getting out to an event or something like that, you should check out one of Huss's events, one of the IC Boys events, or come check out our event, because the secret sauce of those events is just a really great hockey community we have here in Winnipeg, who's just so much fun to get together with, chat hockey, and watch the game with. If you're looking for that, come join us tomorrow at 6:00 at TCB.
And Sean, you mentioned, all the sponsors, and obviously we're grateful for all of our sponsors. TransCanada Brewing has done such, you guys have done such an amazing job with your events,
thank you.
and Huss with Little Brown Jug. And I'm just looking forward to when we get our liver transplant donor for me, because all of this drinking is starting to take a toll.
It's necessary. It will be necessary.
I mean, I love Fireball. I'm just not sure my liver does.
There you go. There you go. So Sean and Ken will be at TCB tomorrow night. We'll be at Farmery Brewing next Saturday morning for a live broadcast as well. So we're getting the show out on the road, all of us, and we appreciate all of our respective sponsors for throwing their support behind us. Rennie, thank you, buddy. We'll do it
anytime,
again real
guys.
soon. We'll catch up
Anytime.
again real soon.
The most
Happy
handsome
holidays
man
to you
on
and yours.
Sportsnet, and the most handsome man from Lac du Bonnie, right there on the left.
There you go. There's going to be some people on fire in the chat room right now, but I appreciate that, guys.
Happy holidays, Sean. Be well.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
There you go. It's Sean Reynolds joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
I thought you guys would have liked that liver transplant joke a little bit more.
I was hoping you would interrupt us a few more times. Is really what I was hoping for. That was where my fingers were crossed.
I mean, Drew, look, like, you know me for a long time. There's a reason why I was kicked out into the hall every single day in grade 4 class. It wasn't because I wasn't a great student. It's because I just never would shut up.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe you may have matured over the last 35 years since then, but clearly that hasn't happened. But for the next 35 years, we'll hopefully see if there's any improvement on that front. Nonetheless, big thanks to Sean for joining us. Reminder: we'll be at our friends at Farmery Brewing next Saturday.
Spency's actually there right now.
Yeah, Spency's already setting up.
He's shoveling the snow in front of 2 Donald.
Yeah, bring a smoker, Spency. Maybe you can smoke us. You can smoke some meat.
You can use the Farmery
broadcasting.
Farmery also has spices, which they've provided. So they have spices that you can use to smoke said meat.
There you go. It's going to be a party next Saturday morning. Illegal Curve Hockey Show live at Farmery Brewing. We appreciate all of our sponsors, all the support that everyone gives us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. When we come back, which defenseman?
As he just pointed to the dinosaur, by the way.
Yeah, this is a dinosaur right here. Hold on. That's Seagram's.
Yeah.
But this is a dinosaur. Ruben got a nice little Hanukkah present from his Baba last night. Shout out to Baba. And he got this nice dinosaur book. So he gave me this little, hold on. He gave me this little sticker yesterday. I think it's a Brontosaurus or something.
There you go. That's important. Which Dylan is more important to re-sign?
Bob
We'll talk
Dylan.
about that next. Brendan or DeMello?
Robert
the Illegal
Zimmerman.
Curve Hockey Show. Shut up for a second. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy. Everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving. The house is upside down. The kids failed miserably at packing the fine china. And my life is in chaos. Chaos.
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew. Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
10 minutes after the top of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. What are you guys doing? Wardrobe changes on the show now?
I just went full. I went full shill. I switched over to my farmery hat.
Well, yeah, and Dave M hooked me up with this farmery hoodie here, so I had to rock that, and then I had to get the Jays hat back on because, as you guys know, I'm the biggest Jays fan in the world.
The biggest Jays fan in the world by far. Just it's overwhelming how much Jays merch and gear and how often you talk about the Jays. It gets to be a little tiresome. None of us we've been waiting for the right opportunity.
I could tell you, I could just ask me any stat about Bo Bichette. I'll tell you right now.
I was gonna say, the Jesse
such a good hitter.
The I actually thought tattoo that you have between your shoulder blades is a little excessive, Ezzy.
Man, Juan Guzman, he's a great pitcher.
Juan Guzman, Junior Felix for life, isn't it? We're just gonna start naming random Jays players. Rance Molyneux, so we can just keep this going for the next.
Does Joe Carter still play for the Blue Jays?
No, Joe Carter doesn't play for the Blue Jays anymore, but he certainly had, the most famous hit for the Blue Jays and one of the most famous hits in the history of Major League Baseball, as we all.
Where does that rank though with the bat flip though?
Well, one won the World Series, and one ultimately led the Jays to lose in the playoffs. Eventually. Fair. So I'm going to go with the one that won the World Series. Yeah. The walk-off home run to win the World Series.
That was against the Atlanta Braves, right?
No, it was off Wild Thing, Mitch Williams,
it was Philadelphia
Phillies.
Yeah. Oh, so that was the next year was against
the Braves.
The
next
Jays
year.
fan.
That's right. I was at that. Hang on. Do I have the banner? Well, I mean, I have this year. I was at that ALCS that year. So the Jays White Sox ALCS,
which was Blue Jays lunch.
Yeah, and that was your first year of university, right, Drew?
That's right. I was there. I was working as a stringer for one of the networks. At that point in time. No, I was at games. What games would those have been? 4 and 5, maybe? I can't remember. Something like that of the ALCS that year. Maybe 3 and 4. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was at that ALCS. Back on the track of the Winnipeg Jets, as we often do get derailed here on this show. And I posed the question, and it was a question that we've been talking about, and people have been asking me about, including Thursday night at Boston Pizza. We had a lengthy conversation about it. Which Dillon is the priority for the Winnipeg Jets? Brendan Dillon, going to be a UFA at season's end. Dylan DeMello, going to be a UFA at season's end. I mean, I think the Jets would probably like to sign both of them. I think they'd be happy with re-signing both. But if you could only re-sign one, which one are you re-signing?
Ooh.
Dave, I'll start with you on this one, as he's been talking too much.
It's a tough one.
Well, I mean, it isn't an easy situation simply because you have to look at the depth of the organization and you have to look at what you think that they're going to be able to do. And so you're trying to think, okay, if Ville Heinola steps up the way and play the way he did in the preseason, which of course is preseason, but if he was going to continue that into the regular season, well, we know that Josh Morrissey is going to be your number one defenseman on that left side, no questions asked. And we know that Dylan Samberg is slowly elevating himself, maybe not so slowly, to that potentially second pairing left side defenseman. So that you're 1-2 a seam established. And then you have depth organizationally with Heinola or a Chisholm or let's say even a Stanley, that could be your third pairing guy potentially. So if you've got that side, but then you look on the right side, and now you've already seen Nate Schmidt somewhat cast aside. Neil Pionk has had a better year. So you're a little bit okay with Neil Pionk, and you've still got him signed after this year. But then you look at the right side from a depth perspective wise, and we're obviously going on the presumption of what the Jets have right now, both on the team and organizationally, and not obviously what they could acquire via trade. You're looking at that and you're saying, well, Dylan DeMello is the more critical piece because first of all, he's a very underrated. Do I think Dylan DeMello is ideally a number two, like your guy who's going to be paired with your top defenseman? No, I think he's ideally more of your 3-4 than I think he's the 2. That's obviously what we've talked about with the Jets really could use is that true number 1 right side defenseman, which they don't have right now. But DeMello has done a very good job.
And he works very well with Josh Morrissey.
Yeah. So pairing him with Josh Morrissey, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying in terms of if you want to talk about the Jets being elite and that sort of idea.
Yeah.
But when you look at it and you think, okay, well, you've got Dylan right there. You've got Pionk. Now you're obviously the team is somewhat stating that Nate Schmidt, who still has another year on his contract after this one, is fallen somewhat out of favor, right? So you've got a situation there. And obviously you can switch a guy, and Nate Schmidt himself is a left shot guy who's now playing on the right side. So you know the guys can do that if they need to. But the issue becomes, what are you going to do? Now, look, folks will say, well, you've got Elias Salomonsson who's playing for Skellefteå over in the Swedish Hockey League. Is he the guy who's going to be the next coming? And we know he was here quite a while, stayed a lot longer than we anticipated. Obviously went down to the Moose and then went back home. So will he be the guy who's going to come up and play that right side? You've got Simon Lundmark, who I talked to Moose assistant coach Eric Dubois about. He's having a much better year, and he was talking about the idea of players winning 50-50 battles. So is Simon Lundmark a guy who's going to jump up and maybe elevate into that role? He's now in his 3rd season here in Manitoba. Tyrell Bauer, another, Jets prospect. So to me, the right side is the bigger question mark right now organizationally than the left is. So while I like Brendan Dillon's game, to me, I guess I went a little bit long as I went through the organization, but to me, the question is, I think you have to sign Dylan DeMello because you just don't have that same right side depth that you do on the left.
Worth noting, of course, that DeMello is a few years younger than Brendan Dillon as well. So if you want to factor in the aging
Brendan
curve,
Dillon's 33, Dylan DeMello, I believe, is 30.
That's correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a 3-year difference there.
Right.
You would expect these guys are getting, 2 or 3 year deals in whatever their next contract looks like. Ezzy, same question to you. Do you have a bone to pick with any of Mr. Manouk's analysis, or are you echoing his thoughts?
Never have a bone to pick with anything that comes out of Dave M's mouth. Look, if all things being
feeds
equal,
you like a baby bird.
Right, exactly. And I agree with what both of you guys said. I think in Dylan, but I think if you're factoring in age, you're factoring in salary, right? Because DeMello's at $3 million, Dylan's at $3.9 million. So I think it's safe to say that you're going to be most likely paying Dylan DeMello less money on his next contract. I think he probably deserves a little bit of a raise, but I think you're probably talking about in that $3.5 million to $4 million range. I don't think you're going to have to get into the $5 million plus range with either of these guys, right, boys? But I would favor Dylan DeMello over Brendan Dillon for many of the reasons that Dave said. Obviously, Morrissey and DeMello is a great pair. Is DeMello a true number 1, number 2 defenseman? No, but he did have his career year offensively last year with 26, 27 points. I mean, look at Dylan DeMello. You're happy if he's in that 20 to 30 point range. He's at, I think, 9 points now. So he's basically on pace for similar offensive totals as last year. Maybe, less goals because I think he's stuck at 1 goal or 2 goals, right? So, DeMello's a great defenseman. And I think you could get him locked up for around $3.5 million a year on a 4 or 5 year deal. But having said that, Brendan Dillon's had a great year, and I hope that the Jets re-sign him as well, right? I don't think he's going to get a crazy raise. He's probably going to be in that, $4 million to $4.5 million a year raise. Maybe you sign him for less years, right? Maybe you give him a 3-year contract as opposed to DeMello. Maybe you go 4 years or 5 years based on the age. But I think, guys, it goes back to what I mentioned in the first half an hour about the Jets being elite. I mean, the Jets defense, they have stepped up their game, right? Like Neil Pionk is playing better than he did last year. Obviously, Josh Morrissey is playing at that same high level that he has been for many years. But I think even though you could argue that the Jets need an upgrade on the right side, I mean, they're top 4 with Morrissey, DeMello, Brendan Dillon, and Neil Pionk. I mean, look, the stats don't lie. The Jets are not giving up as many scoring chances as they were last year, and it's not even close, right? It's like markedly better.
Well,
so
can
I think,
you
you know,
imagine?
ideal world, you sign DeMello and Brendan Dillon, but if it's choosing between DeMello and Dillon, I take him just because he's such a great shutdown defenseman.
I don't think that I ever envisioned with this Winnipeg Jets team, and admittedly, it's not the exact same team, and the addition by subtraction is clearly evident, and we don't need to get any further into that. It's been flogged sufficiently, but I don't think at any point in time through 25 games in the year would I have ever believed that the teams that have given up the fewest goals at 5-on-5. Yeah, Boston, okay, 38 goals against at 5-on-5. Don't really have a problem with that. Well, Los Angeles, yeah, they're stingy. You got Doughty and Kopitar. Those are defensively elite players. Never mind offensively elite. Okay, I can understand LA having given up only 38 goals against at 5-on-5. But then the Winnipeg Jets have only given up 38 goals at 5-on-5. I mean, going back to the question from the beginning of the show, are the Winnipeg Jets elite? Well, I'll tell you one thing's for sure. So far this year, their defensive play at 5-on-5, and the big factor in this is also having Connor Hellebuck, but that's a big factor, and the Jets are elite defensively at 5-on-5.
Sure, and one thing with Connor Hellebuck, I you know, when you look at quality starts, I think he has like 8 straight games giving the Jets a quality start. Well, that's a pretty big factor for a Jets club, but yeah, you're right, Drew. There's no question the defense has been better. Even when Nate Schmidt was in the lineup with Dylan Sandberg, I mean, pretty much anybody playing with Dylan Sandberg has been elevated, and they were remember Jay Fresh put something out. They were like one of the top pairing defensive
Money
things.
Puck
So
that was on, yeah.
It was Money Puck, sorry.
Yeah,
So, anyways, my point is that you just when you're looking at it from that position, and yeah, of course, people are right. You have to be careful. You don't want to block the certain guys from development, because that's the mistake the Jets made early on, right? We talked about that when they kind of stagnated things when they brought in Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, and then you kind of limited him intentionally because you had the Kovacevic, you lost Kovacevic, who obviously went to Montreal, but then you had Dylan Sandberg. There was question marks obviously there. And again, I'm a guy all for letting defensemen marinate in the AHL. A lot different than the forwards. You know, it takes a lot longer to kind of develop, gain that man strength that you need in the NHL to handle the opposition. Because look, Ville Heinola is never going to be Brendan Dillon, but Ville Heinola had to learn body positioning at the AHL level to be able to adjust to playing against guys, so you could figure out how to play defensively against men. And that's just one of those things that he's developed. And we saw a better defensive player last year from the Moose forward and Moose defenseman, sorry. But again, when you look at the organizational depth, and that's what you have to look at. We can't look at what potentially could happen. Oh yeah, the Jets could make a trade. Yeah, they could, or they might not. Like, I mean, of course they could make a trade, and you don't want to block guys. But right now you have to look at it. And from, again, to me, the guy who everybody's excited about, and rightly so, he looked really good during the development camp and preseason, all that stuff, is Elias Salamonson. And he'll most likely be over here next year. So we'll see if he's able to make that.
But as you said, he's at least a couple years away.
I would think so. But I mean, again, you never know, right? As like maybe he's ready to make that jump. I don't know that he is. But
with the way the Jets develop defensemen, true, you know.
It's good. No, you're right.
How many 19, 20-year-old defensemen have played for the Jets lately?
You're right. No, again, I'm with you. I believe he'll go to the Moose anyways. And then again, like I said, maybe someone like Simon Lundmark, the 2019 second rounder, he'll maybe get elevated into that potential. Because again, one of the things that people are that I should mention is that to me, Simon Lundmark is almost like Dylan DeMello. He really is an unheralded guy. He doesn't make a lot of noise because he doesn't produce a ton of points, but he's solid defensively and he's getting more physical. So, I mean, do the Jets have someone that could replace Dylan DeMello if the organization doesn't choose to sign him again? Yeah. And look, it was interesting because I don't know if you guys saw the 32 Thoughts conversation, and they were talking about, you know, how organizations were telling Friedman, oh, we would look at the Jets. And look, let's be realistic. The Jets aren't trading DeMello or Dillon unless they fall off a cliff before the trade deadline.
Right.
They'll use them as their own rentals. And if they can sign one of them, that's what they'll do, but they're not trading either one of those guys. So the reality is those guys are going to be on the Jets, whether they trade Logan Stanley, we don't know, but again, they're going to have to make a decision eventually, Ezzy, right? Because Ville Heinola will be back. And once you do have Ville Heinola, then you're just going to have a glut of too many guys because you got Heinola, Chisholm, Schmidt, and
trading
Stanley
makes the most sense, right? Because you don't want to lose. I mean, there I guess is the option to put Declan Chisholm on a conditioning stint with the Manitoba Moose. I think they can do that once more, if I'm not mistaken. You definitely don't want to lose him on waivers. Declan Chisholm.
I think the rule is you're only allowed it once.
Right. So then you potentially lose him on waivers, which is not going to happen. We saw that happen with Johnny Kovacevic last year, right? Yeah. So I think, I mean, if you're looking at moving a player, I know a lot of people talk about moving Nate Schmidt. I just think that contract basically makes him not tradable.
Nobody's trading you an asset for Nate Schmidt, and then so the Jets
look at what Zadorov got, right? Like the Canucks gave up just draft picks for Zadorov.
Right. But I mean, he had more of a market for him because, I think people were maybe overestimating the impact that he has. I mean, he's a fine defenseman. He's not, they were making him out to be, a panacea of a defense for every team that ever had any defensive issues. Now, Nate Schmidt is obviously with, with $6 million owed this year and next year, he's the one that, is the.
I mean, the salary cap's going up, so you're going to have some space. It's not going to be a huge
issue. Sean's point, Nate Schmidt, I think is fine if he's your number 7 defenseman.
Well, again, if the cap is look at where the Jets are. So the cap next year is going to go up by about $6 million, give or take. No, and the Jets really don't have to. The only UFAs the Jets have next year are Dylan and DeMello, and both those guys are going to get if let's say for argument's sake they both sign here, they're going to get maybe a bit of a raise, but they're not going to get a $6 million raise to take up all that additional cap space. So the Jets won't have a salary cap crunch, even if they still have Nate Schmidt's contract on the books.
Yeah.
And that's we
should mention that Cole Perfetti and David Gustafson are both RFAs.
Pending
RFAs. So, I mean, Perfetti's clearly going to get the bigger bump in salary, right. But Gustafson will get a bit of a bump as well. But Perfetti, you're probably looking at, potentially a longer term contract if they don't do a bridge contract. But I'm sure the Jets want to sign him long term.
I'm sure that they probably would. I mean, Perfetti, of course, doesn't have any arbitration rights or anything. Gustafson does next year, but even Gustafson's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. The Jets won't have salary cap issues for next year, even with Nate Schmidt on the books and with giving raises to DeMello and to Dylan. So they're in a good position salary cap wise. The question is, to Dave's point, how much more seasoning do some of your younger guys need that you don't want to necessarily be blocking them, for the next wave of Jets defensemen and everything along those lines. So the Jets defense is in a good position, still all the questions that we've talked about, but it'll be certainly an interesting one to watch. Do the Jets try and get something done with DeMello? Do they try and get something done with Dylan before the end of the season to, keep them on the roster? Two guys who bring a lot to the team, even if it's not necessarily on the score sheet, but they bring a lot to the team when you watch them play at 5-on-5, etc. And on the PK, of course, for both of them as well. When we come back, Craig Button of TSN is set to join us. Just in case you wonder if I disappear in the middle of the segment, I have a family obligation. So if I go and just go poof, that's why I go poof, and that's in that case, Dave and Ezzy.
I wish you would disappear every segment, Drew.
I wish you'd make that sound as you disappeared, though. That'd be kind of fun.
Just go poof and gone, right?
Yeah.
You guys.
It won't be weird. Craig won't be like, "What the hell's going on? Why am I on this show?" But sure. Try it.
There you go. You guys will have it. It'll be in your good hands if I all of a sudden vanish in the middle of a segment. Craig Button up next. It's Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Commercial free from now till the end of the broadcast. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. Reminder, the Illegal Curve post-game show tomorrow, right about 9:45 or so. Mercifully, it's not a late game. Those Tuesday and Wednesday late games are going to be a bit of when I'm setting up the post games and I'm setting them up and the post game starts at 12:15 a.m. the next day. That's always a little bit of a sort of punched in the belly a little bit when that sort of thing happens. But tomorrow night, 9:45, the Jets and the Ducks, the Illegal Curve post-game show, will talk about everything that happens in Southern California. To talk about the Winnipeg Jets, to talk about the upcoming World Junior Hockey Championships, our good friend Craig Button joins us on the program now. Craig, good morning. How are you? Nice to see you again. Happy holidays.
Oh, well, all the same things to you three gentlemen. But I got to tell you, it disappoints me. You know, you take viewership away from TSN when you do your post-game show. Nobody wants to hear what we have to say because they tune it into you guys. So you're cutting my grass, as they say.
No, Craig, that's actually not true, though, because those folks will get a chance to watch you on illegalcurve.com because I always feature your comment on the website. So it's always available for Jets fans to watch.
We never take away viewers from you, Craig. Never.
Yeah. All kidding aside. So how are you guys on this Saturday? We finally got snow in Calgary. I was in Winnipeg last week for the Edmonton and Chicago. I can't believe the weather in Winnipeg. I mean, +2, 3 degrees, no snow. I drove out to Brandon on Friday. I don't think I've ever had a drive to Brandon on a Friday night in December where it wasn't at least -15 or blowing snow.
Well, it's good that you went last Friday and not last night because the snow came last night. So we had
did it? Okay.
Yeah, it finally came.
We got 30 centimeters here. I shoveled their blue snow 3 times yesterday. So.
We did not get 30 centimeters. So you worked a lot harder than we did. We got probably about, I don't know, I'm going to say 4 or 5 centimeters, something that is very manageable. But like it definitely is the grass is finally gone. I missed out on another opportunity to rake my lawn. I'll have to start shoveling it instead of raking it at this point in time, but that's okay. Craig obviously brought you on talk, as I mentioned, the Jets, talk a little bit about the World Juniors. I mean, you watch the Jets as closely as we do. You see them night in, night out, more or less. You know, at any point over the last number of years, did you ever think that the Jets would be able to be considered an elite defensive team? Because at 5-on-5, they are tied with the Boston Bruins and the Los Angeles Kings for the fewest goals against at 5-on-5. And that's a stat to me that is still, even though I've come to grips with it, it's still to me shocking given all the previous context and all the previous discussions that we've had about the Winnipeg Jets over the last number of years.
Yeah, and we've had those discussions. And, you know, I think that credit has to go to Rick Bowness and his coaching staff. I mean, the improvements were made last year. The market improvements were made last year, and now we're seeing even more improved play in that regard. And certainly the coach, you know, has to instill a system of team play that, you know, has attention to defensive detail, and that certainly was the case last year. A couple of things that I would say this year have pushed it to a higher level. They're deeper in their forward group. They play a lot less in their own zone because they're so good on like playing in the offensive zone. I mean, you watch the game on Thursday night versus Colorado, and that was a big time game by 2 big time teams. And Kevin Sawyer kept talking about just pressing. Rick Bowness said we want to put pressure on them. Well, you can't put pressure on teams if you don't have players you can put pressure on. Mm-hmm. I keep going back to Adam Lowry at the beginning of the season. He said, Pierre-Luc Dubois is better individually than the 3 players we acquired, but we're a better team with the 3 players we acquired. Bigger, faster, stronger, deeper. That's what the Winnipeg Jets are. The template for success in the National Hockey League, when we talk about Stanley Cup, it's there. Whether it be the Vegas Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche, the Tampa Bay. And if the reason the Tampa Bay Lightning have fallen off, well, there's no Goodrow, there's no Gord, there's no Coleman, there's no Palat, there's no Killorn. That's why they've fallen off. They still have the top end guys. It's the reason why I will not have Toronto or Edmonton as a Stanley Cup favorite. They don't have enough depth in their forward group. And so when we watch this team, I think that the depth of the team is really good. Coaching, depth. And then I also think that you have players, you know, you've had the opportunity to watch Mark Scheifele since he turned pro. And you're watching Mark Scheifele now being elite 2-way center. I mean, he had a shift the other night versus in the offensive zone in the third period where he owned it. He didn't have any points in the game, and I thought that was a complete win by every single player in that lineup for the Jets. But he doesn't need to score now Yeah, he's going to score, but he doesn't need to help the team win. And I think that becomes infectious. When your best players, you listen to Mike Modano talk about what it meant for him to be put in those situations by Ken Hitchcock. He said, I resisted it at first, and I realized, wait a sec, I can do more than just score. I think that's where Mark Scheifele finds himself now. And so you have players that are dialed into it. We know Adam Lowry's dialed into it. Nemesnikov, who's out right now, has been really good. But I think you combine those things together, and that's why you're seeing such a strong defense. What is it, 15 straight games with 3 or less goals against? Like 15 straight. Yeah, it is. And they were a little shaky at the beginning. And Connor was a little bit shaky at the beginning, Hellebuyck. Now, I mean, he's right back to, I mean, he's elite. I mean, it's funny. Connor Hellebuyck and Connor McDavid maybe didn't start out the way that we expect to see them play, but there's no question that they have returned to their, elite level status of play in the National Hockey League.
Craig, by the way, 15 is soon going to be 16 straight games with the Jets Ducks coming up tomorrow night. All due respect to the Ducks, but they're not exactly a powerhouse offensive team. But, we mentioned we want to touch on the 2024 World Juniors with you. And, it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were talking about Cole Perfetti with you prior to the draft. And then after the Jets took Perfetti, speaking of guys that were good World Junior players for Team Canada, right? And based on what you said back then, are you at all surprised? I think I know the answer to this about the way Cole Perfetti is playing this year, because I think you would agree he's opening up a lot of eyes around the NHL, especially outside Winnipeg.
It's interesting. Cole and Quentin Byfield went in the same draft. Alexander Holtz, who got drafted by the New Jersey Devils, they all went in the top 10. And what you're seeing now from all 3 of those players, and I picked out those 3, even Lafreniere, who went first overall. Those 4 players have really now, at the ripe old age of 21, starting to emerge as players of their team. Our society is not patient. And I say that as we're not patient with things. That's just the way we are. We take our phones and we get on our phones. What did I miss? We're anxious to get somewhere fast. We want instant gratification, and it's no different in hockey. And so a player gets drafted high, and there's an expectation that the player is going to get there right away. There's a development path, and players are going to be along different development paths. As long as they're progressing and working at the progression, I think there's every reason to remain confident in the players. But what we're seeing with those 4 players, and specifically now Cole, that's what the projection is. It takes players different timelines to get to where they can become really productive for a team, and it does. Fans expect it, and teams might expect it to a certain degree. Players expect it. So you really got to coalesce around the process of development, and just kind of go, okay, keep working, keep doing it. And what I would say is Cole has arrived, but he hasn't arrived fully. There is still so much room in his game to take his level of play higher, and I think he will take it higher. I don't think there's any question he will take it higher. But when you start with the brain that Cole Perfetti has, he's got a fantastic brain. He's got fantastic hands, and he's a competitor. Those qualities all add up to being able to have success in the National Hockey League. And I think they're on display. And I think for the Winnipeg Jets, again, you got a deeper team, right? You think about Mark Scheifele, the way he's playing. I know Cole's playing some center. They're debating, is he a center, is he wing? But he's insulated now too. He doesn't get put into situations that he can handle. Rick Bowness has opportunities to put him out against players and in situations that he's better capable of handling right now than putting him in over his head. And I think that speaks back to the team being deeper. And certainly Cole is demonstrating why the Winnipeg Jets drafted him and why people are high on him. And again, we all need to take a little deep breath at times and be patient with the players. I know I'm not telling any of you something you don't know. You'd be amazed how many times I hear, oh, you're worried about this guy. You're worried, and the World Junior's coming up. And a player will go to that tournament and go, oh, geez, that guy didn't play very good. Are you concerned? Am I concerned? No, I'm not concerned. Like it's a best on best tournament. Like this is a top level tournament. Not like and sometimes players get in there, they're a little bit green, they're a little bit wide eyed, and I've seen players come in a tournament that, like, if they're 18 and play, then the next year they come back and they're dominant. But we want to make quick judgments, and I would just say to everybody, just watch for progression, for progression, and go from there.
Craig, one of the things we talked about, if we were having this conversation in the summer, was the uncertainty surrounding the Winnipeg Jets. Then they signed Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, and it seems like things are established. Then on Monday, they signed Nino Niederreiter, and we're talking about the culture. And Rick Bowness has talked about that quite a bit, changing the culture both on and off the ice. We talked about the on-ice performance here, but a guy like Nino Niederreiter, getting that 3-year deal, getting that permanence, when you hear him talk, I mean, it was an optional at Hockey for All Center on Tuesday. I'm there. There's not a lot of players, media or players, but the fact is the reality was he was on the ice with a lot of the guys who are the fourth liners, the scratches. He's there. He's working, even though he just signed a 3-year deal. What are the Jets getting in a guy like that who brings that both on and off culture to the room?
I'm going to answer your question before I get on my rant. And it doesn't take me long to get on a rant. So, but your question, I want to answer that. Nino is a really well-rounded player, and I think when I use the word well-rounded, he's a really good skater. He's a competitor. He's got size. He can put points up on the board. He can be up. I talk about playing like in the offensive zone and wearing out an opponent. Kevin Sawyer used the term on Thursday night. He said the fourth line has been full value. So let me define, and I did it on the broad. I said, here's what full value means. It means that when you go out on the ice, it's not an easy shift for the opponent. The opponent is sitting on their bench going, wow, I have no chance to rest, mentally or physically, because it's going to be a challenge. So that third line now with Nino and Adam and Mason, I mean, that's an outstanding third line in the National Hockey League. That's one of the very best third lines, in my view, in the National Hockey League. And so Nino can do so many things in the game. I mean, the pace that he plays. I said bigger, faster, stronger, deeper. Nino added when they traded for him last year. Obviously, the three Kings players added that. And now you're wearing out opponents. And Nino is a player that is no fun to play against, because he's not a player that's going to what I would say punish you with respect to, but he leans on you. He's heavy. My dear late friend Brad McCrimmon said he hated playing against players that just leaned on you, because he goes, it was just a constant. It was like you're trying to shed this weight and you can't do it. And that's, to me, what Nino does. And yes, he's got skill, and yes, he's got some. So what he is, and I think the contract's fantastic for the Winnipeg Jets and for Nino Niederreiter. But I think that those types of players become really valuable. I will say this. I mean, I think now Kevin probably is turning his attention to number 2 and number 5, because I think they've been really valuable, Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon, to this team. And, as pending unrestricted free agents, as you're trying to build that culture. Now, my little rant is about, and we heard this across players don't want to stay in Canada. Players don't want to stay in Canada. Players don't want to stay in Canada. Well, Kevin Cheveldayoff certainly has dispelled that notion, and the Winnipeg Jets have certainly dispelled that notion, with Connor Hellebuyck committing long-term, Mark Scheifele committing long-term, Nino Niederreiter committing long-term. We already saw Kyle Connor committing long-term, and and you look at an environment, you look at culture, and Nino talked about it. He goes, I look around here, I come here, he played last year. He sees Scheifele and Hellebuyck committing, and he says, we got a good team. I want to be here. Create a good team, be in an environment where players can feel valued. I don't think there's enough credit given to Rick Bowness and his coaching staff for valuing players. We all remember the end of the season last year and how frustrated Rick was, and some blowback. But Rick values his players, and I think that there's no way players are not going to sign long-term, knowing Rick Bowness is the coach, without having that belief. And I think they do. And Kevin Cheveldayoff, and I love Kevin. I really do. I mean, he's a longtime friend, and I have great respect for him. But, when he believed in the group heading into last season, I think that was important. He thought we could take steps forward. But when he realized that, no, I got to change the group, he did. And I know as a manager, sometimes, why didn't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why haven't you done that? But like the first step was, I think the group can do it. And having belief in a group sometimes is important. And then you get another answer. Kevin got another answer and he said, I got to change it. And he did. And kudos to him, because I think the environment and the culture with the Winnipeg Jets has been really, 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 really good. And listen, they got some really good young players in the system that are going to emerge here in the next 12, 18, 24 months that are just going to add to this group, because this is not a group that's old or aging out. This is a group that is really moving up as a real strong team in the National Hockey League.
Craig, you talk about players moving up, the team moving up. Dylan Samberg has just continued to take strides on the back end for the Winnipeg Jets. As he continues to develop, because really still only his second full season, as he continues to develop, what's the next step in his development from your perspective? I mean, his underlying numbers this year, particularly defensively, have been absolutely tremendous. Some of the best defensive metrics, in the NHL on the back end. What do you see as his next sort of level, the next ladder, the next rung on the ladder for him to achieve?
He's got to get his sexiness up, because that's where people will start to notice. He's got to start doing toe drags and dangling so everybody can see how good he is.
Tongue firmly in cheek.
He's from Hermantown, Minnesota. I mean, he won championships at the lake there. He won championships at UMD. Dylan is a winner. When you watch Dylan play, and this is just my statement on Dylan, because I love the way Dylan plays. And you want him on your team. You don't want to play against him. You want him on your team, because he's all in. He's all in for winning. He's in it to win it. And Dylan delivers. He's a competitor. And to your point, Drew, he is now a player that, like, what he gives you is incredibly important to success. And certainly that. And I think what you're seeing with Dylan, it's not so much what more he needs to do. I think you're seeing him be more confident, being a little bit more patient with the puck. He's not looking to just get rid of the puck. The game on Thursday, and just a little sidebar here. How many times do we hear the term play fast? We hear it all the time, right? If people want to know what playing fast is, watch that game on Thursday night, because it was played fast from a physical point of view, a mental point of view, an offensive point of view, a defensive point of view. There was times in that game, and when you watch players in that type of an environment where you got to think just as fast as you move, a lot of times just get rid of the puck. I counted the times that Dylan just settled, came up the ice, made a nice little pass, and away they went. That's a player that's settling in, confident with the speed in the game. And I don't think he's ever going to be a big offensive player, but I think much like Brendan Dillon has become a real significant presence on the blue line through his own play, and I think that's a really good mentor for Dylan. That's what I expect Dylan to continue to evolve. Just that rock solid, this is who I am, this is what you're going to get, and you're never going to come, and I'm never going to give you anything less than that. That's what I think we're seeing that. Again, talking about progression, that's what we're seeing with Dylan. But there's a lot of teams that can use a Dylan Samberg and a Brendan Dillon. And I'm talking about teams that think they're Stanley Cup contenders. Like, give me a break.
Craig Button, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday morning. Craig, thank you for the answers. I'm going to depart. Dave and Ezzy are going to take it from here. I got a family obligation I got to run to. But it is always great to see you, and we always appreciate your time and everything else. So Dave and Ezzy will drive this bus home for the next 10 or so minutes or so.
Thanks, Drew. And enjoy the time with your family.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay, so Craig, now that we've got rid of the dead weight, we can transition over to the 2024 World Junior Hockey Championship, and which obviously Team Canada's, as you know, the national junior team selection camp begins tomorrow in Oakville. As you know, I do communications for Hockey Manitoba, so got to give a shout out to Connor Geekie of Strathclair, Denton Matejchuk of Dominion City. They're obviously going to be participating. And the question I wanted to ask you was just with 2.5 weeks to go before Team Canada's first game, what is your outlook? Because we know Owen Beck is the only returning player. Obviously, Canada is always going to be a favorite at the World Junior. So what's kind of standing to you when Junior Section Camp gets underway tomorrow about this team?
A couple of things a couple of things stand out. One of the things is the way the tournament is set up now. It's really imperative that a team gets better as the tournament goes on, and I think that has become a full realization for all countries participating. And you want to win every game, but it's about the progression. Canada lost their first game last year to Czechia on opening day. And again, I talk about players and everything, Chicken Little, the sky's falling. Oh, can you believe? Oh, what are they going to do? Oh, my Lord. Listen, I've seen it now, and I've seen it from a lot of different countries. Build. So that's number one for Hockey Canada with this group. There's no Connor Bedard there. There just isn't. Joshua Waugh, an exceptional offensive player. Dylan Gunther, they're just not there. So what they're going to have is a different type of team, and they're going to be long and competitive defensively on the blue line. I mean, they got some really good, big, strong players. Denton Matejchuk is going to run the power play just like Olin Zellweger ran it, and I think that that becomes really important for that part of the game. But they're going to be big in the middle of the ice. Obviously they have some skill in some of their forwards, but they want to be bigger on the walls than smaller. The skilled guys are going to play in the top part of the thing, and then they're going to be big and hard to play against. We talk about top six, bottom six. It's going to be a top nine, and they want to have a really hard fourth line. A hard fourth line that go like a Morgan Barron, David Gustafson, that type of a fourth line, that goes out there and grinds you and makes life really, really difficult for you. And, Axel has come in and played really well in the absence of Rasmus Kupari, and, he's been really good with his speed. But they want to have a hard fourth line, not a top nine and fourth line goes out there. They want that fourth line to go out and really be hard to play against. The goaltending might be a little bit unknown, but that's not the first time Canada's gone into a tournament with what I would consider unknown goaltending. It's known to them, and Mathis Rousseau is a really good goaltender in Halifax. Joel Hofer, there's a Manitoba shout out again. Let's not forget in 2020 that him and Dawes came into they weren't well known. Dawes got the start in that tournament. Again, Canada lost, and then Hofer took it over right to the gold medal. They have really good, dependable goaltending. They really do. And Dominic DeCivicentis, Winnipeg Jets draft pick, to me, Rousseau and Dom are going to be the two goaltenders. That's a good spot. They've both been really good. And I think that the team can rely on steady, consistent, mature goaltending. The blue line's going to be longer and hard to play against. They're going to defend the middle of the ice. Everybody talks about the big ice. No. The big, you don't have to worry about outside the dots. Go play out there. It's like going on Lake Manitoba. Go out there. I don't care where you are. Here's our net. Here's the front of the net, and we're going to defend this hard. And that's don't buy into any of this big ice stuff. You got to play inside the dots. And these players are going to defend hard inside the dots. They're going to attack inside the dots offensively. I think USA and Sweden start off the tournament as co-favorites. They've won the last two U18 championships. They both played in the championship game of the U18. Sweden beating USA in 2022 and USA beating Sweden in 2023. So their mature teams are good teams. You're right. Canada will always be competitive. And I think that there's a lot of confidence in the group. And one of the things that I think becomes really important for Team Canada is being encouraged to be who you are. You're not going to be last year's team. And I think Alan Letang and the management group are going to really emphasize that with the play and let them be their own have their own identity in their own group. And I listen, they're going to be playing on the 4th in a semifinal. I have no doubt about that. And I think that from there, that's where you hope your game is in order, and let's go.
Well, hopefully we'll be listening. I believe Dennis is doing the broadcast again, so hopefully we'll be hearing our friend Dennis Bayak making the call. Always iconic.
You'll be hearing him. You'll be hearing him.
Always iconic when we get to hear the pride of Winnipegosis, Craig. He may live in BC now, but he's always going to be the pride of Winnipegosis. But, usually there's a lot of excitement for Jets fans. They get a chance to watch prospects in the World Junior. And this year they won't have that same level because Colby Barlow obviously dealing with some injuries. So he wasn't an invite. Rutger McGroarty, he obviously has that injury he sustained in the game for Michigan. I know he was invited to the U.S. camp, but we'll see if he's going to be ready to go. What about Elias Salamonson and Fabian Wagner? Those are the two guys who are going to be playing for Sweden. Salamonson's an interesting character because I wasn't expecting him to be back in Winnipeg for training camp. And then he was here in training camp and he was staying. Then suddenly he was on the Moose. They eventually sent him back to Schlefka. But to me, he's the guy who a lot of Jets fans are excited because we talk about depth in the organization and that right side defensively. He's kind of like that prized, the Ville Heinola of the right side right now, Craig.
He's a big time competitor. He's a big time competitor. You look at that Swedish blue line, they have a really competitive group back there. Tommy Wilander, who was Vancouver's first round draft pick, Salamonson, this isn't a freewheeling skate up there. They can do that, but they compete hard defensively. You got to be a hard defender. And that's what Salamonson is. And Salamonson's going to play in the National Hockey League. I know watching him, you're looking at different parts of his game. And you're going, okay, he has just gone this way. He's gone right nicely in that progression, as I talked about. I believe he will be an NHL player, a regular NHL player. But good, hard defending and not hesitant to jump in the attack. If I had to use just kind of a Winnipeg Jets comparable, you think about when they acquired Dylan DeMello. So Dylan, okay, what type of defenseman is he? Okay, 4-5, right? Well, you watch Dylan play now. Dylan's not afraid to jump into the attack. He competes hard. He plays like in the defensive zone, and that's how Salamonson plays. He plays that kind of style of game, and he'll be really good. Fabian Wagner is going to be a really important part of this team. He was part of the team that won the gold medal to U18. He returns. He knows what the tournament's about. And I think that, he's quick, he's fast, he can, and again, we talk about depth in your lineup. That's what the Swedes have. They have lots of depth to their lineup. And it allows Fabian to get in there and contribute offensively. And, I'll just finish with Rutger. And I have a man crush on Rutger, just like I have a man crush on Colby. And Colby would be on the team if he hadn't run into the injuries. Rutger will be the captain of USA. If he's able to play, and maybe they should just have him there anyway to be the captain because his leadership is unbelievable and his spirit is infectious. So I know they're really, and it might be a case. It really might be a case where he goes over there. Maybe he doesn't play the first couple of games, as he tries to ramp up if the injury is progressing in a manner that's satisfactory to everybody, Jets included. Jets are a part of this evaluation with Rutger McGroarty, as they should be. University of Michigan, obviously, but don't be surprised if he's making that progress that maybe he doesn't play game 1 or 2, but they're getting him ramped up to come back, a little bit later in the tournament.
Well, Craig, you might have a man crush on Barlow and Rutger McGroarty, but we have a man crush on you, and we always appreciate.
And your spirit is also infectious, Craig.
Thanks, Ezra. I really appreciate that.
Well, we always appreciate whenever you can join us on a Saturday morning. And you know what, Craig, I actually meant to ask you when you were in the press box, but I didn't want to interrupt you because I knew you're doing TSN stuff. I was like, you're welcome to join us on a post-game show anytime you want. If you're here in Winnipeg or anytime, really, you can always join us for a chat for the post-game show.
You're never interrupting me. Just honestly, I'm up there, listen, Freddie Maslachuk, who's just a wonderful person. A lot of times he's dragging me. Craig, we need you here in 3 minutes. We need you here. So don't worry about that. You always do that. And so I'll finish with this, wishing everybody, best of the holiday season and certainly a prosperous new year. But Ezra, my question's for you. where's Shohei's plane going to land?
Yeah. Yeah. I was joking that I'm the biggest Blue Jays fan ever wearing this hat. I'm obviously a bit of a bandwagon Fairweather fan, but yeah, I just found out recently that actually wasn't Shohei's plane. So it's pretty funny. Hassan Remus had the flight path up on Winnipeg Sports Talk yesterday. It's pretty funny, but I think you'd agree, Craig, that this is the biggest signing in Canadian sports history. I think Twitter almost blew up yesterday.
Is he going to sign though?
It looks like he is. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't follow it as much as others, but I mean, it seems like the reports are coming out that he's going to sign. But yeah, I guess it's not really done until it's done, right?
Hey, listen, I think it would be the Blue Jays are Canada's team, and signing Ohtani would be unbelievable. You're right. It might be as big as Henderson in '72.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, anytime we can have you on, Craig, we always appreciate it. So thank you for spending part of your Saturday morning with us. We really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thanks so much, Craig.
Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, take care.
Okay, there he goes. That's Craig Button, of course, of TSN, knows pretty much everything there is about the Jets and Jets prospects, and that's why we always we love having him on, because he's a great guest, but he's always provides tons of insight for folks to listen to and to digest. So thanks for we've got empty Drew Mandel, as he decided to bring Drew back
didn't
somehow,
sign off, so I thought I'd bring him in. Drew, I really enjoyed your insights on today's show. What do you think?
Drew, hold on. Drew, I have a question. What do you think about Craig Button's insight? Did you think it was good? Because I thought it was good. Anyways. Whew, well,
Drew, what are you going to have for lunch today? Drew, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Oh, I don't know. How often does he think about the Roman Empire? Well, regardless, let's get rid of Mandel. Even his little thing is bugging me. This is the Manuk Ginsburg experience, just like everybody wanted. You spent your Saturday morning with us. You'll be spending your Sunday night with us on the Illegal Curve post-game show. We'll, of course, have coverage. The Jets are practicing, so there'll most likely be a practice report on a little site called illegalcurve.com. Oh, Spency wants to be Drew. No, as he's got to go, Spency. We don't have time for shenanigans as much as I want. No Moose Minute. I'll save that for tomorrow. The Moose were in action last night. They're in action tomorrow. So I'll do a little Moose doubleheader on the post-game show. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. A big thanks to all of our sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the Saturday show, the website, a possibility. They are Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, The Rink Guys. Whoops, that's an old one. That's no longer The Rink Guys. And Farmery Beer. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Well, as I don't know where the time flies, but sometimes it does when you're having fun. And that's what we did this Saturday morning with all of you. So thank you for spending your Saturday with us on Illegal Curve. I'm Dave Manuk. He's Ezra Ginsburg. Make sure you smash that like button before you get your Saturday started. Be safe. Happy holidays, everyone. And we will talk to you tomorrow night on the Illegal Curve postgame show. This has been another broadcast of Illegal Curve Hockey.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.